Yeah, so here we are. Welcome to the new year 2025. And you say, Dave just authorized me to say that nothing changed. Dave is late as ever, always late, waiting for his coffee in the corner, whatever, you know. Um, so welcome to Talking Niagara, the first show of 2025. We had a 2 week break there, and I think we deserved it. Although tired. I'm tired. Moved office. Right. So there we go. All right. So welcome everybody. Have a great morning. It's Monday, 6th of January. Kids are back today or tomorrow, and so they're back at school. So here's a big question. I put out a post the other day saying, "Hey, we're going to be back. We're going to be back today."
Here I am.
And Sandra McKinnon basically is saying, "Well, I think you should be discussing all of these issues, right?" Her thing was the bus shelters. One, two, abandoned properties, especially since the fact that the city owns more than 100. Three, the fact that one of these burnt down recently and the city is blaming squatters for that. That may well be the case. And four, that she believes that the city's kind of too much in the pockets of the developers.
Well, there's a lot. Well, those were all very typical things. Like, you know, there's always that suspicion that are. I
Yeah.
doubt very much. If there are people connected with developers, it may be one or two counselors. If you're looking for corruption, you may find one or two counselors. You probably more likely find city staff that would be involved with corruption with developers and so on. But I doubt it very much in a city this size, like where there's so many eyeballs on one another.
You
You
see,
know,
what you've got to remember is what is the city council about? Largely, and you look at where they spend a lot of their time on the council agenda. It's about new development projects, isn't it? We
trying to
are
get them started. Yeah.
yeah, we are here about the new development projects. That's largely what it's all about, right?
Yeah. So they have. Yeah, it's yeah. You're definitely going to get some.
And the vast majority, whether you like them or not, the vast majority, you place yourself for a moment on city council. A project comes along, and you've kind of got those criteria for passing a project. You might kind of say, "Well, I really don't like this one. It's about." It's about 5 stories too high for me, and I'm not so sure about the traffic flow, the impact upon the traffic in this, that it's adding another 500 cars to McLeod Road, for example. So when it comes down to voting about it, you've got one of two choices. You either vote in support or vote against it, right? Which way do you go? So it's not that you're in the pocket. If you support it, you're not necessarily in the pockets of the developers. You're looking at what's the best for the city, aren't you?
Yeah. But I think what she says, the pocket of developers, or I don't know. I think in my particular opinion, uh, counselors that don't do the research well enough on a different project and how the ramifications on a project or a development has. Let's face it, a city councilor cannot stop a development. There's going to
No.
be a lot of NIMBY stuff out there, but in essence, a city councilor can only resist a development for certain reasons, certain good reasons. And if you find developments going up that shouldn't be going up, then you can start to look at incompetence or corruption. I don't think we have a whole lot of that on any level. Now,
Well, we have a big
the
problem.
Empire
We have a
building
big
just burned
problem.
down or something like that. That may have been arson, basically, because they want to. Have you noticed that all those buildings there are all being burnt down and all that? And the old police station, they tried to burn that down one time. It could be arson. It could be just to open up that because it's going to be prime real estate. You're pretty sure there's going to be hotels and stuff that could be put there, or apartment buildings, whatever. And if you've got a historic building like the Empire building there, it's really, really convenient to get rid of it. So you can put up what you want now. Now you have some pretty good real estate down there opened up. So you can look at things like that. But like bus shelter, there's could be all kinds of things that will get you angry, things that aren't being done well.
Things that get you angry, but when it comes down to it, you've got to make a choice somewhere down the line, right? What's important, and remember this also: what's important to one person is not necessarily important to other people, right? So, I'm not saying that Sandra McKinnon is wrong in what she's saying. I'm just saying it's not the same. It doesn't have the same importance with other people. There are limitations to what you can do by law at local city hall, right? That's certainly true. We've got issues about what city can do, and often people misunderstand what the city can do. And I'm not accusing Sandra of this, but I'm saying that there are many people that do misunderstand what the city can do. Where the city has no voice on a particular issue, they could make any decision they want. It's not going to make a damn difference.
Yeah,
because they've got no legal no legal path.
You're better off finding, trying to drill down on what you really like feel bad about. If you feel that the City Hall is in the pockets of developers, tell us in how they are that. To say it, anyone can say anything. Suspect it and then try to discover it is probably kind of things that people above our pay grade can do. They would have to be more like investigative journalists or whatever, but anyone could be angry about anything. Now, she had a good point about bus shelters. Believe me, I see people standing in piles of snow trying to get on buses. That kind of thing. But on the other hand, she made no mention of the tendency of vandalizing bus shelters. That kind of thing. And
that's an awkward problem.
That you're in the hands of developers. Well, in what way? Some of the council people are business people. Are they shaking hands with developers behind the back? How about city staff? If you need a recommendation for a hotel and really you're just sort of on the line, then you maybe want to go see city staff, not a counselor. Or work with a counselor. But those things will out themselves pretty quickly because the size of our city is very small. You'd have to have everybody in on it.
And exactly, a lot of those, and you see, a development comes along. Every development that comes along, you've kind of got to make a yes or no decision upon it. And at the end of the day, there's many decisions whereby possibly those people who are sitting in that meeting, who are listening to the presentations, who have all the documentation that you and I don't get to see necessarily, but have all the backup documentation behind it. And they're kind of, if you've got a list of 100 points and you're checking them off as yes or no down that list of 100 points, there's got to be some points on that list where you're going, No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. And at the end of the day, kind of, let's say that you've got of the 100 points on your list, say it ticks off, 92 of them, right? You've got 8 items that you don't like on it. Well, you got to figure out the seriousness of those 8 items, haven't you? If they're minor things, you're just going to approve that building.
Yeah, I remember you need development. You can resist development to a certain point, for many different reasons. But in any case, yeah, if things aren't going right, well, you have to have proof too. Like you just kind of point and get angry. That's the easy thing. Proof is the other part of things. Anyway, and plus, well, I guess just to change the subject here, I guess our fearless leader is going to drop out.
Well, I was going to move on to that one next, actually, while we were here. It sounds like okay, so it sounds like they're basically saying that.
Well, I see Mike Cushman's remark there: real estate agents voting themselves work. Peter Angelo buying property cheap at Farmers Park. Yeah, he was. But remember, he was absolved of anything wrong there. I don't know why he was absolved. Obviously, he was given a gift by the Stanford Volunteer Fire Department, fire people at the Farmers Park there, because they were losing money, and Peter Angelo brought them in under the umbrella of the city, which saved them. So they gifted him with a piece of land for 1/16 its worth, and Peter Angelo just kind of hid and let his lawyer do his talking, which must have cost him a lot of money, but he did that. I think that is that still has to be resolved. I think that's a bit of corruption there. That's and
yeah, I'm concerned about
that. The fact that he voted on issues around that, even though his piece of land is actually in Niagara on the Lakes jurisdiction. So
yeah, but it's still abutting Fireman's Park. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, it is, and he got away with it because he had a powerful lawyer, and those people who were opposing him didn't have the resources to match his. So that's the kind of thing that will go on. That's right out. That was right out in the open, though. But those other kind of shady things happen. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, you might get a counselor having a brand new pool suddenly being installed in their backyard, and the developer that they voted for a certain building happened to be the one that did it. So, and it was for free. Those kind of things, or free vacations, or like stuff like that. So yeah, you really gotta have a clear look at that kind of thing. But the contracts, the city awards, I suspect that sometimes there's someone that will leak information to a certain contractor, so that when their bid comes in, it's
that stuff you can't really. And that stuff you can't easily check. You can't easily see.
That's not. Yeah. So I years ago I remember a case like that here in the city where they had a preferred contractor, but another contractor came in better, beat them out, and the next year the other one was back in top again because it was kind of fishy how suddenly the previous contractor came in much more lower than they did the year before they lost the contract, that kind of thing. On their bid, but there's always things like that. But you got to keep vigilant, and sometimes I think just sort of complacency makes it look like there is uh, there is evil afoot because just complacency. Oh, we'll just give it to this contractor or just give it to that kind because it's easy. They're the ones that always do it. That kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah, I know. All right. So as you stated, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been predicted to be resigning within a few days, particularly before they're expecting him to resign today. But the reason for this is because the Liberal caucus is meeting Wednesday, and if he resigns today or tomorrow, it won't appear as if the Liberal caucus ousted him as party leader. I'm not so sure he's even as clued up on this. I think he's still in cloud cuckoo land that he believes the world loves him.
Well, as you've known since the summer, I have predicted that he'll be gone by 111.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. No,
and it looks like my prediction is going to be pretty close.
9/11, you said. 9/11/24, you said. See,
oh no, I said I revised that. I said he should have left 9/11, but he will.
It's more likely. It's more likely that he is going to. There's a lot of pressure on him over Christmas. A lot of Liberals have basically been coming out and saying, "I don't think I like what's going on right now. My position's under attack in my constituency, my riding."
What is unusual here is the amount of evidence heaped upon evidence that Trudeau needed. He would have been better off to resign by 9/11 because it was very clear then that he was losing a lot. And
I agree with you.
Yes. And what kept him in the job? Like I in one sense, I respect his resistance to a lot of the talk. But once that talk becomes very clear, then the evidence is clear. It's his job to step down. And
yeah,
unfortunately, he is going to have to take. Well, he went skiing with his kids during the Christmas break there. And so he may not have had a walk in the snow like his dad, but he may have had a ski in the slope like his dad did. His dad may be walking in decline, but Justin's going downhill at rapid speeds like he's on skis. What it takes to get to a person that's full of sycophants telling them how wonderful he is. This is a leader that was the darling of the world. He had enormous popularity when he came in 2015. He was looked to be the future. He was a progressive kind of guy. He said everything right. He globetrotted everywhere. The whole world seemed to love him. And now nobody likes him. The whole world looks at him as a complete failure and a hypocrite and all those other things. And yet he just couldn't get it. They love me. They love me. This is a little family squabble, he said after Chrystia Freeland left. So I don't know if he's given his party enough time to rebuild. They are going to get completely vanquished. He has to step down. He has to prorogue government. If he doesn't do that, then we're going to have
he doesn't need. He doesn't actually need to prorogue government. He doesn't need to come back. You see, your government only has to sit 1 day per year by law, right? It's in the Constitution, right?
Oh, you mean they're working overtime? Oh, that's what. If I was a politician, I would say that. If I was a politician, I would say that. I only have to be here 1 day a week, but you know what? 1 day a year, but you know what? I was here 10. I'm doing overtime on your behalf.
Yeah, the fact that they are in there longer, so he doesn't have to come back on the 26th of January. They could take until March or April to come back and then face a June election.
They won't. They can't. They'll never do that.
I know. Unlikely, but But you know
Well,
where I'm coming.
in cases like that, the governor general has to step in and demand, or the host speaker too, has to demand that the government does what it's supposed to do. There are ways and means by which you cannot just say, okay, I'm going to come back in October and not
No,
come.
you can't. But
You can't do that.
no.
The government, the other parties will insist that the governor general or the speaker demand that the government come back to the House. So yeah, it may be legal, but like King Charlie's supposed to be the legal leader of our country, but who's paying attention to him? No one, So so there are things that are possible, but his like if he wants to do anything for his party right now, he has to pro-government so that the party can pick a leader and hopefully not get totally vanquished in the next election. And that's what's appearing to happen. And the sooner that election happens, the more vulnerable they are. So what they have to do is stall for time. And they're also looking for a charismatic leader. And it looks like Carney will not take the finance job, but will consider the PM, the leader of the party's job.
But he's not even an MP.
No, right? Well, that they'll fix him up in a safe seat somewhere, so he'll get elected.
Yeah,
so he can't be. I think he could be a leader of the Liberal Party, but he doesn't have to be.
He can be. It's a weird. I find that weird that that you can actually have a leader of a party in Canada who's not an MP, because that couldn't even happen in Britain.
In any case, what they would do is they would appoint him, make him the leader of the party, basically, and then find him a safe seat somewhere and put him in. Right now, Trudeau's woes are so bad that he may not even win his own riding.
Yeah.
And you won't find that on the CBC or CTV. I had to get that from a foreign news source. That his
at the moment, anything to do with the Canadian government seems to be best obtained from foreign news sources, right?
Yeah.
This story that I put forward to you comes from the Daily Mail in Britain.
Yeah, so they're Yeah, so Trudeau might not even win his own riding. I think that would be the clincher for Trudeau if he needs convincing. Right now, he seems to be blind, deaf, and dumb to all things happening.
Yeah.
Plus the as we'll have another article coming up. Plus the productivity of Canada is desperately bad. They really, really messed up immigration, big time. Now, Trudeau came out and said, yeah, okay, we got the numbers wrong. We're on the right track, but we got the numbers wrong, so we have to adjust immigration. Immigration put a false veneer of a country that is in recession, but is not officially in recession. Our debt to GDP ratio that they keep talking about is put on a false narrative, because what apparently is happening is the amount of people that come into the country have artificially inflated the economy so that it's running at about zero and zero increases. And those zero increases are only maintained by the amount of new people coming into the country and spending money, which makes it look as if the economy is doing slightly better than it is. And once you stop those new people coming into the country, the real nature of the economy will show itself, which means that we are behind Australia, New Zealand is catching up to us. We're behind Australia, behind Britain, way behind the United States on GDP to individual per capita ratio. So our economy is doing very poorly. Our productivity is doing very poorly. So what looks like to be a poor performance is actually much, much worse.
Yeah,
and
we've been talking over the last year about poor productivity, and at the end of the day, productivity is is a major problem for our economy.
Well, what Chrystia Freeland and others in the Liberal Party like to say are that our debt to GDP ratio is much better than the other G7 countries, but our debt to our GDP to per capita, our GDP to per capita is worse than most of the G7 countries. Our economy is declining on that. And when we talk about our debt to GDP ratio, we are not including the debt of provinces, regions, and municipalities, which factor in on this, which put a false rosy color on our own federal debt. The country is hugely in debt all across the board.
By the way, Mike asked this question if we're suggesting our media is censored. No, I'm not suggesting our media is censored. What I am saying is that our media might well be slanted insofar as they, we've got a certain sector of the media that's trying to be nice to the Liberals, and they tend to tell stories with a very much a particular slant, whereas we have whereas foreign media tends to tell it the way it is, right? That's what I'm saying.
Foreign media reporting on Canada, they don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
But if you take CTV or CBC, they have to worry about it. CBC has to worry about their funding. So if the Liberal, if you get a Liberal government in there, and so you want to stroke the Liberal government, and right now the CBC is doing a terrible job all in all, although they've pulled up their socks, I've noticed. So they as Pierre Poilievre said, they carry the water of the Liberal Party, because most of the people they hire are Liberals then. But yeah, I say there is a censorship. There is especially a censorship when it comes to, let's say, the bodies of the children that are supposed to be First Nations children. You don't get any politicians saying, where are the bodies? Not one. Not one of the politicians, or very few of them, will say, where are the bodies? Because and you'll find that a lot of the news agencies won't publish that, because they don't want to be looked as if they're bigots, or they don't want to get involved in it. So they're self-censoring, if you want to say they're self-censoring. We are censored in the way the news, foreign news, like particularly Ukraine and Gaza, are told. As you found out, less and less and less amounts of detail are being told about Ukraine. Their nationalism, the Russia versus Ukrainian speaker divide, all these other things, the Azov brigade, all these other things that we heard immediately. All of a sudden, those things are chopped out. So it's a kind of like a good guy, bad guy scenario. Russia bad, Ukraine good. Now that might be generally the case overall, because Russia is the one that did invade. But what caused it and other things like that, we do have a censoring situation where we're fed a certain amount of the news, and that's why it's so good to go to foreign sources. You take a place like Al Jazeera in Doha, in Qatar. They're an awesome news agency, except when it comes to talking about anything that Qatar does. They just leave it alone, because Qatar sponsors Al Jazeera, which is a pretty progressive and really good journalist outfit, but they dare not talk about anything that happened in Qatar, like the migrant workers that were abused when they were building the soccer fields, et cetera, et cetera. But anything outside of that, and particularly for the Muslim world, they're a beacon of truth out there, and their English service is first rate. But but they are self-censoring themselves. They're not going to talk anything about Qatar and their oligarchic type of government. Oh, but they are a station for which the rest of the world can be viewed. Not Qatar, though. BBC, they're well known for their world service is pretty damn good. If they go into Sudan, or if they go into Mali, or they go into anywhere, they're pretty good, well focused on foreign stuff, but they're famously bad at focusing on their own country. So you have to pick and choose your
But Mike
you have to understand that they quite often they all censor things. The United States is the worst, of course, because there are money-driven news agencies, so they're gonna find what you want to hear about, and they're gonna put them on for audiences.
And Mike basically says he calls that censorship. In a way, yes, it is. In a way,
it is. Yeah,
right.
Whether it's self-censorship or political censorship, like in the United States, news agencies like CNN and Fox and stuff are really terrible that way. They are targeting specific audiences. The Sun and the Star are in newspapers in Toronto. They're opposite. The Sun carries the water of the conservatives, and the Star carries the water of the liberals. So they're going to feed you slanted agendas. There's a really good app out there called Ground News, and it was particularly foreign stuff. You can go to Ground News even without paying for the app and see the spectrum of one particular story and how it's told from the left to the right and all the way through to the center. See what kind of spin each side puts on. And if it's a story about, let's say, about Gaza, the right won't talk about the brutality of Gaza, where the left will. So, you know what I mean? They might not even. The right ring newspapers won't even tell you. Sometimes, or like 20 more kids got killed, they might not even put it in, or in the back pages, kind of thing, where the left might put it up front. That sort of thing. So so censorship. There is a lot of censorship out there, but it's not all government censorship. It's not like China. You know that the government's the one that's censoring it. In India, there's censorship of kind because so many of the news agencies there are very, very worried about going against Modi. But Indian reports on other places in the world, if you watch some of the Indian news on YouTube and stuff like that, they're very, 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 very good when it comes to countries that don't involve them. They can talk about what's happening in the States and Canada. They can have what Europe, but you might not believe them when they're talking about Pakistan because that's India's age-old enemy, or China. But you can pretty much figure they're going to tell you the truth about Africa or places where they have no interest.
Right. Okay. So Peter Biker, to quote Frank Zappa, government is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. Yeah, that's quite Zappa. That really is Zappa, that one.
Yeah. And Noam Chomsky has often said that big football games and the big football games, the big sporting events and other such stuff, Taylor Swifts of the world kind of thing, are diversions put there for the masses, basically.
Okay, so one of the things you did talk about, and there was an article about this, so just, I don't know if you want to make any more about it, but Mark Carney is basically looking at stroking the Liberal caucus to see if he can become the leader. is probably the fair way to talk about it, isn't it?
And that's
definitely Mark Carney is not. No wonder Mark Carney turned down the finance, right? And here's where Trudeau's really falling apart. He dumps Chrystia Freeland, and he's going to put Mark Carney in her spot. But he didn't ask Mark Carney, because when he asked Mark Carney to take over, he says, "No, I don't want that job."
Why would he? Why would he?
Yeah. Why would
Mark
he want?
Carney doesn't want to be. Mark Carney doesn't want to be associated with a failing regime. He might want to take over the government because basically now he can apply the axe, or he can spend here or apply the axe here, and he would then come out the hero somewhat. And so where liberals would be facing a terminal decline, he might actually put him back up a little bit, right?
Yeah,
but I don't know that now is the time for Mark Carney to even go for that. Let the liberals crash and burn, and then rebuild them.
Yeah, maybe, but he may have a sense of duty. He may find this as a bit of a challenge. Myself.
Yeah, no, it's easy for me.
If they're reaching out to him, because he has the same sort of progressive ideas that the liberals are supposed to have, but the liberals have not implemented them well. They haven't governed well. Maybe Mark Carney can say, well, I can govern better, but he's going to take a shellacking. And if he has a sense of responsibility to the party of his choice, which is obviously liberal, then if somebody doesn't take over the helm, and because if left as it is, the party's going to be eviscerated.
It's going to be crashing again.
Completely wiped out.
It's a rudderless. It's a ship without a steering wheel or a rudder right now.
Well, even if they get rid of their rusty rudder, which is Trudeau, it just floats aimlessly. They'll probably do better. But if they put somebody in there with some sort of vision and somebody that could talk back to Poilievre with some sort of authority, like Trudeau and Freeland have never been able to speak to Pierre Poilievre on his own, because he's got a lot more facts at his fingertips.
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges, though, is I would say that, you see, when you look at what happened in the development of the Liberals, you had Andrew Scheer was voted in as leader to follow. Was he the first one? Then you had O'Toole, and now you've got, so it's taken several changes in leadership in order to come up with, what they now believe to be a leader that can actually get them and win them the polls.
Well, remember how long Pierre Poilievre took to get there. He turned down the job when both those two became the leader. He knew it wasn't the time to be the leader, so he didn't really go for the being leader. But after O'Toole got dumped, that was the point where he figured, okay, now I'll make my move. But if he had done that earlier, he would not have been successful, any more successful than the other two.
No, I grant that, and the point being is that technically one could have said, O'Toole standing down because he lost that election was probably, in my mind, a wrong move, because he was just getting known to be by.
It wasn't his choice. The party voted him out.
Yeah. Well, that's the part of the problem, is that I think he was getting to be known as a leader at that point, and the party made the wrong decision. But that's neither here nor there, right?
Well,
that is what it is, right?
Well, it's he took on the leadership, and he tried a certain method. If anyone was going to be able to take advantage of the Liberals when they called an election in the middle of a pandemic, he really didn't have enough time to build up people. like people didn't
I
know
don't think
who he
Aaron
was.
O'Toole. I don't think
Yeah,
Aaron
that's
O'Toole
that's why Polyev turned it down, man, because like he would have lost too because he didn't have time to get out there and the country know him.
Yeah.
So he's a much more astute politician, I think, Polyev. Plus,
I'm not doubting that.
he has the ability to galvanize his troops.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that. But again, remember, right now, the Conservatives maintain at least a 20-point lead over the Liberals. It may well be
6.
It may well be that they're down to 20, 25 MPs in the new parliament. And in fact, Bloc could be the official opposition.
Well, probably will be.
Yeah.
Because right now, it looks like both the NDP and the Liberals will get destroyed. Don't believe Jagmeet Singh about not supporting the Liberals. He's panicking right now. His party is not in any better shape than the Liberals right now.
No, they're not.
So whatever he says on the surface, he's panicking underneath. Like,
in fact, the fact that we haven't even mentioned the NDP in this entire conversation till now, 44 minutes into the day, means that the NDP is essentially a meaningless party right now.
Well, not so, because they're the one that's supporting the government still, even though they say they ripped up the agreement back in September.
Apart from that.
No, so they're an insignificant player, and that's because they hitched their wagon to the Liberals for so long.
Yeah,
and then Singh says, "Okay, I'm ripping up the agreement," but didn't really rip it up. he taped it back together when nobody was looking, and it supported the government through 8 different non-confidence votes or possibilities. So so Singh is not in any better place. So the only 2 parties that are comfortable right now are the Conservatives and the Bloc. The Bloc has a sustained support in Quebec. They may lose a seat or 2 to the Conservatives, but probably not to anyone else. And they probably gain Liberal and NDP seats that do exist in Quebec. So the Bloc, the only 2 parties that are comfortable and could withstand an election comfortably right now, if it would happen today, are the Conservatives and the Bloc.
Okay, well, welcome. Good morning, Sandra McKinnon. Welcome along to the new year, and good morning to Scott McEachran, who doesn't live in this area, but friend of mine. Welcome, Scott.
Yeah.
Sandra McKinnon saying, Premier of Alberta, I would support as a good leader. I would like.
Oh, you mean Smith?
And she's strong.
Danielle Smith?
Yeah. He said, I like the woman and she's strong, right? The NDP seems irrelevant. Any support deal of Liberals at this point would be viewed as two-faced turnabout. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of problems with Singh too. The Maserati Marxist, they call him. He's got thousands of dollars of Rolex watches on his wrist. $1,000. I don't know how much a Rolex watch costs, but he's got a Rolex watch. Got fancy cars, fancy clothes. Yeah, it doesn't look too much like an NDP guy, does he?
He doesn't look least like an NDP guy. Remember, he spent thousands of dollars on qualifying as a lawyer, let alone what he's done with his career. So he's a top-notch lawyer, right?
Yeah, and he wasn't even educated in Canada. His parents were well-to-do, and they sent him to the States to get educated. So,
yeah,
I doubt that he knows what the average person's going through. And when it comes to the Khalistani thing, he cannot even mention the Khalistani terrorist when asked about a certain terrorist. Do you believe this guy is a terrorist? And he just says, "Oh, I believe there's problems." But he won't say the names. He won't say the names because, well, he can't. When the six have big banners and big posters with non-terrorists on it, and he won't say anything about that. I don't know.
Well, and he's a whole different ball game from Jack Layton anyway, right? Whole different ball game, right?
Well, you have in NDPs, you have the intellectual socialists, and you have the socialists that make their way up from the labor. Basically, the intellectual socialists are would be like Marx and Engels and those kinds, or Stephen Lewis or David Lewis or people of that kind. The guys that rise up from the working class, guys like Wayne Gates. Wayne Gates would be a perfect guy like that. He was a working guy, right? And he espoused the.
But I don't believe whilst what you've got with the NDP is a cobbled together Farmers Party and Union Party. It's not really a party with a single identity anyway.
No, it used to be a workers, farmers type of party and trying to make things fair for the average working person. But right now, the NDP has more of a reputation of making things fair for they and them kind of thing, transsexuals and all kinds of minor areas of government. That's why, of course, like Kamala Harris lost in the United States because they didn't put enough attention on the working class. That sort of thing, and that is probably likely what will happen. And the Green Party is just out of it.
And in fact,
aside from their environmental platform, which is probably pretty good. I mean, really, do you remember when they were going they were just like out to lunch in some of their ideas of foreign? It's just insane.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's come back local for the last few minutes of the show. Buchanan Avenue residents were misled. This is relation to the former motel on Buchanan Avenue that was turned into a Niagara Regional Housing's transitional housing facility. And they're building now an iron fence around it, almost because it has become such a disaster.
Well, this is what I ended with last just before Christmas, when we stopped. I pointed this out. I brought it right out of the city council agenda, and I pointed it out a couple times and talked about this. I couldn't at the time. I couldn't find an article on it, but then thereafter I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is just a repeat of what we were talking about beforehand, where the region has come and put up kind of like a halfway house for the homeless and down and out, and they assured the neighborhood in and around Buchanan Avenue and the other one at Summer Street, which is also failing as well, and in and around Buchanan Avenue, that they're going to vet the people that go into this housing facility. They're going to make sure they're the nice ones. They're the ones that don't have a whole lot of problems. They're going to make sure that the neighborhood is safe and unaffected by this. And the neighborhood itself discussed it and felt, it's their duty to help. And so they went along and allowed it. The region, of course, failed miserably and misled. Either misled them by intent or misled them because they really didn't know what they're talking about. But that facility, that facility for homeless people, has become a nightmare. There's crime, garbage. They used to have a security guard, but that costs too much, so they're going to put up a big steel fence, which is really ugly. And and the city councils are pretty mad. As a matter of fact, Lori Lococo says we were misled here.
Yeah,
because the city council was the ones that were behind it, and our city CEO, Burgess, he had to be very defensive because he could only do what he was.
Well, as was, of course, De Benedetti. What's his? He is
Nick
the
Benedetti. Yeah, he's the spokesperson for the
region. For the region, yeah, absolutely, very defensive. So
no, he was the spokesperson for the neighborhood, not for the region.
Sorry,
he was the one that brought it forward to the city, our city council, saying, "Look, we did what we were supposed to do as responsible."
Yeah, sorry, I got it the wrong way around.
Yeah, he said to the council, basically, he's very upset, and you could tell.
He's the one who said this is a crackhead city, isn't he?
I don't know if he said that, but he was the one that presented the issue to city council, and he said that him and his neighbors were led astray by the region about how this thing will go. And there are other accusations that the Summer Street residency that's run by the region was also supposed to be a place where they would reintroduce people back into society and help them out, but vet them first, make sure that they had the ability or the best chance to get back into society. In other words, you have X amount of homeless people, and some of them are drug addicted, some of them are have mental problems, some so what you want to do, what the region said, they're going to vet them and make sure that they put the ones in that housing program that had the best chance of coming back into society, but they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so you have people coming out of there swearing and cursing at old people in the neighborhood. You have people being like the tourists being robbed. Tourists that stay in B&Bs or Airbnbs there in the area. The one was being robbed. You have needles and all kinds of things, and a big ugly fence and a cargo container. And so the region has not been forthcoming to the city. It guaranteed the city and the neighborhood a responsible way in which to reintroduce certain people on the edge of society back in. And what they did not do that at all. As a matter of fact, they've had police come there with flak jackets on, and who have told the neighbors to get in the basement in case the bullets start flying.
Yeah. Oh no, that actually
residential neighborhood.
That actually was one of the worst aspects of this whole affair as we ended 2024.
Yeah, really. There's kids and old people and all that. Imagine that. And what about your granddaughter, grandson walking along and finding needles?
Yeah.
And those kind of things.
So Scott's asking, what's the alternative? Yeah, the question here is that I don't think enough was considered about the security of that area when they put this shelter in there. It was a good idea to take over that motel, and it was a good step in the right direction. But I don't think that they put in place the kind of the supports necessary in order to get this done.
Look, I don't know who does these kind of things, but when I lived downtown, I lived on Ontario Avenue, and the region was going to put a halfway house for people coming out of jail, a halfway house for convicts, so they could get their feet back on the ground. And so they were going to put it close to our neighborhood. Well, I was furious about this, not because they were putting it close to our neighborhood. That wasn't much of a problem for me. It was the fact of where they were putting it. They were putting it on Zimmerman Avenue at the time, a stone's throw from some of the most notorious bars on Bridge Street and the center of prostitution and drug trafficking So you have bars, prostitutes, and drug trafficking 2 blocks from where they were going to be housed. I mean, it was insane. So the region was going to put it there. And I think I wrote an article. I wrote to someone. I says, "What are you doing? You're putting what you're doing is you're putting ex-cons or people that are trying to reintroduce themselves in society right in the middle of temptation, drugs, prostitutes, and sleazy bars. Seriously, what are you doing?" I remember watching drug trades happen right in front of the police on Bridge Street. The fact they used the police as a cover. The police car would park, and right across from the police, wherever the police cars stopped, that's where the drug trades would go on. If you were in a cabbie showed me that. A guy I know who had a cab. He drove along, watch this. So wherever the cops were, that's where the guys would be making the trades, right in front of the cops, where they would least expect it. But in those days, it was bags of dope, but of marijuana. It was other things too, but so that's where they were going to put guys that they were trying to reintroduce into society. Jail. They put them right in the middle of temptation. So I don't know Logic did that, and I think the same thing with this. They just lied.
I think part of the problem here is that, what you're talking about with temptation is absolutely true. Buchanan Avenue, remember, was one of the sleaziest parts of the downtown of the tourist area. Sure, they've tried to actually do. They've upgraded and boosted the value of the Stanley Avenue stretch of that neighborhood, but really they've done nothing about that stretch of Buchanan Avenue, which was really, it was the head, it was where the drug dealers played their trade on a daily basis. In fact, that motel was a drug motel at one point. Sure. I agree with the city taking it over, but it doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. When you've got these drug deals going on in that neighborhood, and a lot of the people who are concerned about this have always been concerned about what was going on in Buchanan Avenue, and that's been a problem. It's been a major problem. It's 1 block away from Stanley. 1 block away from Stanley, and you kind of think, well, how nice and how much they've improved Stanley Avenue, but yet you've got this festering right next to it, and that motel always was a drug haven.
Well, someone said, well, what's the alternative? I say Calogero Estates. That's where it should go. Right there. They can't get in trouble in Calogero Estates. That's the best place to put it. Now, they always put these in more humble neighborhoods, and then they foist this on the neighbors who are pretty ordinary people. And but basically, the region is and the alternative. However, when people talk about the alternative, they say put them outside of town. Put them outside of town. Find areas outside of town where they cannot hurt or damage the neighborhoods they're in.
Yeah, and
remember, these people, anyone who lives on Buchanan Avenue now and tries to sell their house, what kind of a price are they going to get it when they have a rehab center right across the street that looks bad? It's got a big, ugly steel fence around it. Of course, they voted that down the city, and they have a big sea can sitting there. Yeah, you're gonna that's going to do a lot to enhance your property, right? Yeah. How are you going to sell it?
Yeah,
and all you have to do is open up the newspapers and find out the complaints that people have of this area. Imagine a real estate agent trying to sell you a place there. They have to be upfront. Well, we've got this rehab center over there, and we got to find. We only have, not as many needles as we used to have, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Steve McEachran is making the point, out of sight, out of mind sounds nice, but unrealistic. How does reintegration function without transportation access? And that's the one thing you don't have to worry about in Buchanan Avenue, because being in the center of this city, who cares about the transportation? Whereas if you were talking about the town sites, which other people have been talking about, yeah, that would be a major issue about transportation. But again, the fact they can't
just make sure there's a bus stop as far, or make a bus stop close to it. Right now, what you do,
but
it's
also
not managed well. The region has put these two places in Niagara Falls, and it's harming the neighborhoods around. It's reducing the land value that the people have in their land, so they can't. Some of the people were old. Sooner or later, they're going to want to be able to sell to go to retirement homes or something. They're going to get a lot less money. So the region has not done what it has promised to do.
No,
it has promised to reintroduce people back into society, the ones that are capable of it, but they didn't. They just put anybody in there, and they have police showing up all the time, and the neighborhood being all upset. This is when the neighborhood got together and said, it's our responsibility to help, to help your brother and sister get back on their feet, figuratively speaking. And they trusted the region and the city to say that, we're going to manage this well, and it won't affect you at all. That's just didn't happen. It went the other way.
Sandra is saying, if a wealthy needs a retreat out of sight, out of mind, why not relocate out of the city? Safety for us as well, for us all.
I'm not. You're not talking about a concentration camp out somewhere outside the city. You're talking about a place that's that has that's not within a neighborhood, but that you could hurt. Some like one of the hotels or something that are non-functioning up on Lundy's Lane, but have a bus come a few times a day there, make it a bus stop, and but they cannot damage a neighborhood in and around it. Like, you want an old hotel? There's a bunch of hotels that just don't function well up there anymore.
Yeah, and part of this is that you've got a load of old motels in that area. On Slater Avenue, you've got them on Desson Avenue.
No, you don't want it in there. Those are neighborhoods. You don't want them in there. You don't want them.
You've got them on Kitchener as well, and and again,
look, Kitchener, Slater, and all those places, particularly Kitchener near Stanley, used to be a hooker hangout and a drug hangout. Seriously, do you really want to put the neighborhood?
Exactly my point. It's exactly my point. You're talking about an area that was infamous for drugs 10 years ago. And as you said, a hooker hangout at one point as well. We've basically condemned that neighborhood to, continuing problems.
Yeah. So the thing is, what can we do then? Well, for one thing, the region has to be up front. They were not capable of delivering.
No,
as a matter of fact, once it got out of hand, they just kind of turned their back on it and hoped that it'll just all go away. So they have to either close up shop or do something. And they felt that having a security guard there was too expensive. So they're going to put up a big fence. Well, you better have 2 security guards. If you're going to have that thing there, you might want to have 2 or 3 security guards. If the region really wants something to work, and they're not properly vetting people like they said they would. You know what I mean? Who are the social workers running this thing? Like, why is it such a disaster? I'm sure there's working for some people in there, but if they're not vetting the people, I'm
sure it is
enough, that's not doing well. If you mix people who have less of a chance of reintroducing themselves to society to the ones that have the best chance, you're going to drag them all down.
Yeah, absolutely you are. Yeah, and that's the biggest problem we face with this.
So that is very, very disappointing. It's very, very disappointing, particularly when the neighborhood was very accepting of this and felt a certain responsibility according to Nick Benedetti there. Benedetti. I forgot his name right there. So they were accepting. They were given assurances by the region. The city themselves were given assurances by the region that didn't match at all the expectations that the city or the neighborhood had.
And Scott makes a point of the challenge is a real plan, a reasonably clean zone absent of temptation, as Dave says, yet with transportation access to enable employment options. Yes.
Yeah, and get them in and out of the city, dental appointments, whatever else they have. But then it also has to be well supervised, because if you take a lot of people who are homeless or whatever, trying to come out of that, and you put them all in one place, then you have a target for the drug dealers, etc. But if you put them a little bit outside the city in one of those more remote hotels there, but have a transportation system coming in, and you have a security guard there, then you can keep an eye on who's coming in and who's going out, who's peddling drugs or other things. You have much more control over it. And once you get a drug dealer in there and he brings temptation or thieves or whatever else,
I think we're going to have to call it quits at that point.
Yes, indeed.
And pick up on some of the other stories tomorrow as we go on.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's yeah. So the world's a real mess, and if they just had taken our advice these 5 years we've been doing this, that we would have had a paradise by now. But we'll keep trying.
We keep trying, yes, as you say. Yeah. Plant the seed and see where it goes. Transportation is irrelevant. No transport when recovering. Family access, yes, but the people themselves, no. Yeah, and thank you, Scott, for coming along. And I think there we will kind of leave it at that point. Thank you, Sandra, for your viewpoints as well. All right. And Dave?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu, but pray for peace.